right, welcome to Texas!
He's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 174 of 911 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, EJ, and with me are my lovely co-hosts, Katie and Grace.
Hey guys.
Hi everyone.
Today we'll be talking about 911 Nashville, Season 1, Episode 11, titled Dawn Begins. There is so much to talk about. Sorry for my voice. I'm getting over kind of a sinus infection, so it's going to sound a little different. But yeah, so we are doing this slightly out of order since technically we've already talked about 112. That was the episode Buck and Eddie were in, but we decided to go back and continue to talk about Nashville. So we start the episode with, we see a baby or hear a baby crying as a little boy is kind of waking up in the middle of the night. And this kid's like yelling for his parents to, take care of the baby. The baby must be hungry. But unfortunately, after several cries and no one answering, he steps out of his room and realizes that most of the house is on fire. And so he runs to his sister's bedroom where her crib is because she's a very young baby, and picks her up and is trying to protect her. And just as he's holding her, he kind of starts to pass out from the smoke, and a firefighter comes in and rescues him. Unfortunately, we do find out later in the next scene in the hospital, an older lady from the neighbors was sitting with him, and he kind of explains that his parents and his little sister died in the fire. And then the older woman kind of promises that she and her granddaughter will sit with him until Child Protective Services can come and help them figure out what's going to happen. And so this little girl comes in with 2 little cups, and she hands one to him, and we find out that it's a young Dixie. So this is how Dawn and Dixie met when they were kids. And I'm like, I definitely pegged it as soon as she walked in. I was like, okay, this is a baby Dixie.
I was just like, of course she is. And like, honestly, I wasn't mad at it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cute, but like, yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. I think I'm just a little tired because I did not peg it immediately, but it was funny because I'm just gonna say for all the younger versions, they did a really good job casting.
Yeah.
Like that might be my favorite thing about the episode is actually that they really pegged the casting.
I did really like the casting. I think the younger versions are like just such good images of them. I think they did a really good job with that. That is also a good point.
Mm-hmm.
So I was watching like even the little girl who is Dixie, because we don't meet a young life, but we do meet the younger Dixie. I was there like, now who does she remind me of? And then they said it was Dixie. I'm like, oh, actually that makes
sense. Yeah. So they go back to present day, and we have Don sitting in, I guess, his office at home, and he's playing with that lighter, and he got another letter. He hasn't been reading them, and he talks to Blythe briefly about the parole hearing coming up, and he had a panic attack at work the night before. So this really just picks up like right after the episode, and he doesn't want anybody to know at work. And then we kind of go flashback again, and we see Don getting thrown in jail, and he's like yelling at the cop. And the cops like say that again, and then obviously hear this like teenage woman yelling at him about, I wouldn't do that if I were you, and ends up being Dixie. They reconnect, and we kind of see this little montage of them kind of building their young life together. He talks about wanting to be a singer, and she's writing songs. He talks about not knowing what to do. She suggests him being a firefighter because he's constantly playing with that lighter, and apparently it was his dad's. It was the only thing that survived the fire. And she admits that she has stage fright, and then they kind of have this pact or agreement that he'll go into firefighting and she'll do some singing at this little club bar that they've kind of been hanging out at. So we see them get an apartment together, and they move in together. Neither one of them have a lot. We see Dawn as a new probie at the 113, and they did cast some really good actors. I don't know. I'm going to have to do a little more digging, but I remember seeing Leanne Rimes in the recording studio, and she said she was recording for 911 Nashville. I'm 99% sure the woman singing was actually Leanne Rimes, and the girl was lip syncing to her voice, because that is Leanne Rimes' voice coming out of that.
Yeah, I honestly was thinking, I was like thinking that with that like somewhat while I was watching it, because I was just like not even connecting that. I was just like, wow, this like sounds familiar, like that kind of thing, not necessarily like paying attention. But I was like, yeah, that would track does kind of make sense.
Yeah, I didn't really realize. Also, I'm not familiar with Leanne Rhymes beyond this, so
Yeah.
but I was wondering a little bit about, because first of all, the voice was very excellent singing, but I was also like, that's a very mature voice, because for anyone that doesn't know, your voice doesn't stop maturing until you're around 30,
Yeah.
and these kids are not 30.
Right.
So I was like, oh, that is a very mature voice. Okay, understood.
Yeah. Yeah, like I would say this is like them in their like early 20s.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
I don't think they're underage, because if they were an underage, they would have been juvenile. They wouldn't be
Yeah,
like in
Yeah.
county, you know what I mean?
Right.
yeah. And they were like at a bar when they were talking about like firefighting and
Yeah.
singing and all that. So like they definitely were of age.
Mm-hmm.
I also call everybody kids, including people that are older than me. So,
No, I know. I just wanted to, because I was thinking
Right.
about that too when we were talking about them in the jail scene. I just wanted
Yeah.
to say that.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
But I do agree that I think they cast really well, because even there's certain statements and comments that the characters make, and the way they say them sounds just like Dawn and Dixie. So I was like, wow, that's really cool. And so Dawn is a probie. One of the captain's requirements is you can't use the hose on a fire until you've mastered rolling it up a certain way. I can't remember the name of it right now, but he kept doing it, and so we kind of see this montage of him like trying and failing to get it done in under a minute.
Under 2 minutes.
Under 2 minutes, yes. Yeah, something like that. And so you obviously see the decline of their relationship too, because then he's starting to be tired, and they kind of made a pact and a promise that they would always show up for each other no matter how tired or busy they got. But then he was more tired at work, and his work was failing because of it, so he stopped going to her shows at night, and then she'd be asleep and sound asleep when he was going to work, so they were just kind of missing each other. And then all of a sudden he comes back one day, and she's packing because she's going on tour to be a backup singer for Faith Hill. She didn't tell him. She's like, well, I was going to tell you now. So she kind of just leaves, and that's kind of where, and he just kind of assumes that this is their breaking up, because that's what it seems like to me.
I mean, she said that they always knew they weren't gonna like last, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So as far as
Yeah.
anyone's concerned, that's a pretty breakup sounding thing to me.
Right.
Right, which that kind of makes sense, because if they're like in their early 20s, like, they're just like, living life, seeing where things go. It's not like serious or anything. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Happens. Yeah.
So we're back to present day, and Donna gone to Roxy to get some help because he didn't want to have a panic attack, because he had to go up in front of the committee that was deciding whether this guy was going to get paroled or not. And apparently when they did eventually find out who killed his family, he was not able at the time of because he was already a firefighter by the time that they found them, and he was not able to, he ended up having a panic attack and wasn't able to truly say what happened and how it infected him. So they didn't really charge the guy with as much as they could have, I think, and he did not want that to happen again, which I totally understand, because
Right.
he has the opportunity to really say his piece.
And in the episode before this one, he had a panic attack and Roxy was there. That's
Yeah.
partially the reason why he was talking to her.
Right.
And she, of course, was able to like also give insight, because she had been through some sort of trauma in her
Yeah.
life, where she mentioned like a trauma journal or something.
Yeah. Yeah, so she suggested really the only way is to really nail it down and like talk about it. So she suggested writing it in a journal. Then we end up seeing Don at like a coffee shop or a cafe, sitting outside. He's trying to write in this journal, but it's a blank page. And of course, Dixie shows up, and he kind of explains what's going on. And she actually, because she was living like across the street or next door to his house at the time, she explains her perspective of what happened that night, even though he didn't really want her to, because he's never really thought back and faced it. But apparently he's able to come up with something. And
I will say that I did not love that, because I'm like, this is something you do with a therapist and someone who is trained, not
Right.
at a cafe with your ex.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it did somewhat of things, just because it's like somebody that knew of him at that time, and she like somewhat, it would have made like outside wise, obviously, yes, like it, but like also we got to remember he didn't have time to like go to therapy for weeks. This like obviously the parole hearing was coming up fast, so it's like he didn't have time to deal with this problem with necessarily a therapist. He kind of just had to go through it.
Yeah, like it makes
So-
sense. I just still, I don't
Yeah.
know. There was I did.
Like if
Sprinkled
he
me a little
had
wrong.
had more time to prepare, of
Yeah.
course, like that's
That's
obviously
true.
what he should have done. That was even mentioned when he was talking to Roxy. He's like,
Yeah,
well,
Roxy even said the same thing.
yeah, she said,
True.
yeah, she mentioned that, but like he didn't have that
Yeah.
time
Because it was
to,
only like a couple days
That's
away
true.
from
yeah.
when he had to do this. Yeah, and I can't remember if it was said in this conversation or in the past, but Dixie was actually the one who called 911 when house.
Yeah, it
yeah.
was mentioned in the scene with the grandmother.
Hospital scene.
Yeah, because he remembers getting up for a drink of water or something and seeing the house on fire and stuff. So she ended up calling. So then we see a flashback briefly of there's a fire at some horse stables, and this young woman is trying to get the horses out. She ends up getting the horses out. Unfortunately, there's some embers that starts like flying off the fire and get on a truck with some hay on it. So Dawn decides to get the keys and drive the truck away from the horses and into a pond because there's nowhere else to drive, I guess.
You know what? Sure.
And then after he comes back from being soaking wet, this young woman hugs him and asks for his name, and they introduce each other, and we end up finding out that's Blythe.
I
So
was like,
like,
yeah,
of course
I
we
knew
this is
when we
how it
pulled up to
happened.
the scene, which I feel like it's very obvious. I was just like, yep, I know where this is gonna go.
Right?
See, I was too busy thinking about how this was a ripoff of Lone Star.
Yeah.
This whole barn fire like thing with
Right.
Jake, like that's not even meant like maliciously or anything. That's just the
Yeah.
literal only thing I was thinking about was like, this looks familiar.
Yeah, I think
That is the one thing I think that I blocked out because just that storyline, I like
Such a strange
had such a
storyline.
love-hate relationship for it.
yeah,
It was such a odd storyline, and it's definitely one that falls into the background.
Yeah,
for
I
me.
think for me, it's more of I've gotten to the point with Nashville that unfortunately Nashville and Lone Star have similarities because of the climate and the regions they're in, to where some of this stuff unfortunately is going to overlap. And even though, yeah, it feels like a knockoff because Lone Star did it first, I kind of just push that out of my head because,
Yeah.
I don't want to keep constantly saying it's, Lone Star did it better, or whatever, because they did.
It's
But
like
in this case, I'm bringing it up because it was
no, I totally get it.
we also
for
had to
sure.
save the
Yeah.
horses in.
Yeah.
I cared about being like, oh, Lone Star did that, and the horses. That's all I cared
Yeah,
about.
I'm glad. Thankfully, none of the horses got injured. They were able to
Mhm.
get them to safety. Blythe had actually gotten them all out, which was good. So the next day, she shows up to give Dawn a pie at the fire station, and she asked him out. He's unsure. I think obviously he just kind of broke up with Dixie, and then we kind of see a montage of them hanging out, and then she's teaching him how to horseback ride. He's teaching her how to fish, and over this next couple of montages, we kind of see that he shares about his family and how they've died, and he explains that oftentimes kids that are out from the other side of the tracks, because he's obviously knows that Blythe is very well off, so no one has ever found who did this to his parents and his sister, and there's evidence sitting in PD, and nobody's done anything on the case to find out or even run DNA, which obviously Blythe is very emotional hearing his story, and then she's upset about the fact that they haven't done anything. And then she shows up at his apartment and they share some conversations there. He tried to show up to her parents, and there's this other guy, apparently it's a friend of her brother's, who she had dated briefly and was now exes, and so this guy was an asshole. Let's just put it
literally, and he came up before this actually because it was in that one montage at the end, him coming up, and I'm like, not the ex showing up like a friggin' country stereotype,
right?
Yeah.
Oh, you giving horse lessons now? Oh man. And then,
I was like, why couldn't we have met the brother?
Right. Yeah.
I was, I was actually thinking when before we even started talking, I'm like, oh, maybe that's the brother, and then it was like, no, it's ex, and I'm like, oh, come on.
Okay, to be fair, I didn't hear the ex very clearly at first, and I just thought he said that he was the brother, and then he was like, oh, so that's your ex, and I was like, I what? And then I went back. I went back because I was like, oh, maybe he should be
Yeah.
dead if he was that much of a dick. And then I went back and re-listened, and I was like, oh wait, no, it was the brother's friend. Never mind.
Yeah.
Roll the right back.
And at one time he had showed up to Dawn had come over to meet her father, and the ex was there again, leaving to get out of the hair and it didn't go so well because the ex and Dawn got into it in a fighting match. So Blythe chases the ex off and then tells Dawn to go home, and she shows up after like a week because Dawn refused to answer calls and he was upset, and they have this conversation about him feeling like, he doesn't deserve her. He's a screw up reject, that kind of stuff. And, they have a back and forth, and then they end up admitting they love each other. And just as she's about to share something with him, Blythe shows up. Dixie shows up, sorry. And Dawn's like, what are you doing here? I thought you had another 6 months. And then like Dixie's talking about how he's cheating on her. I'm like, you made it very clear that the relationship was over, so he had every right to move on.
I guess she expected him to be sitting like a dog, tail wagging at the door, waiting for her to come home. That's what I think was happening here.
Yep.
That's what I think was happening here. Also, I would be absolutely shocked if she did not have relations of her own while she was on tour. Naturally, that's not even in a shame way. Like, naturally.
Yeah.
But if she thought they were still together, that's a whole, then I will shame.
Yeah, it was that whole like stereotype of like basically you breaking up with somebody and then like you go your separate ways, you're doing your life or whatever, and then you come back and you expect to like just hit the unpause button and go back to where you were before. That's not usually how it works.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
But that's like Dixie's entire attitude with their relationship, even
for
now.
Sure.
And it's like, girl, it's been like 30, 20 years. Like,
Yeah.
since you guys even started.
Right.
But like, come on, guys.
Well, and then she starts calling Blythe some things like slut and accusing Dawn of cheating on her. And obviously with Dixie and Blythe, it ends up being messy, of course. So nothing's changed in present day.
I know. I was like, so we never started. Like, I had always wondered, like, where the relationship of them both being with him at different times had started. But this, I was just like, oh, this explains everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I too would hold a grudge against both someone who tried to take my man and who also called me a slut. I've held grudges over far lesser things.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
So Dixie ends up saying something about Dawn wanting something, and Blythe says, well, I haven't even shared everything Dawn wants to know. And then she goes on to tell him that she and her dad basically had, I'm sure, paid some money to some detective at the department to look into the case, and they did DNA testing on the evidence and found someone and arrested them, and she was coming to get him to take him to the station. So if it wasn't for Blythe, they wouldn't actually know who killed his parents and his sister. Okay. So she takes Dawn to the station so he can give his report, and leaves Blythe standing in the empty apartment. So that was kind of an interesting twist. And then we have present day where we see Dawn actually speaking at the parole hearing. I feel bad because he definitely had every right to say what he said. I'm like, he was going through a lot that day. And so I feel bad for him because that's a lot to process. And it's not something that you're ever going to get over. I mean, he lost both of his parents and his sister in a blink of an eye. And because he never got to share a lot of that, he took the opportunity to share not only how he felt about what this guy did to him, which is kill his family, but after, so here the parole people are like, who are on the board are trying to like, okay, thanks. And he's like, no, I'm not done yet. And we didn't talk about briefly the cyclist scene accident that the 113 responded to, where the cyclist was pinned and there was no way that they would be able to save her because of where she was injured and how much she was bleeding. And she ended up telling the driver, which was just a kid doing a TikTok video, and he hit her, not seeing her, and she actually told him she forgives him, which I think that was kind of the clue in for Dawn, that he decided to forgive the guy. He said, we'll always have this, connection, even if they didn't want it. But he forgives them because he finally read one of the letters that the guy had sent him about him apologizing and just saying that he was trying to get money out of his dad. Thought he would just try and scare him. And he just regretted it and regrets it to this day. And he still will regret this. But Dawn actually forgave him. And we actually Like that was all that was said. Like, so we don't know exactly what the results were. And then they go out in the hallway, and obviously Blue and Ryan and Dixie, unfortunately, was there, and Blythe, and was it Taylor and
Like,
Roxy?
they were all there.
Okay, so they were all there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, were they all there? I gotta remember.
Yeah,
seeing.
everybody was there.
Okay. Anyway, so the whole team was there. And so Blue kind of makes the comment about him wishing he could, know more about his grandparents. And I think one of them said, or Dawn says, well, if you buy me a beer, he's like, I'd happily tell you what I remember. So they all kind of go off, and Blythe has a moment to kind of have some words with Dixie. And Blythe shares that Dawn had shared what Dixie had said at the cafe when he was trying to write down all that stuff. And there was a comment about, it wasn't the first time I built him up and you took him home. Dixie was saying that. And the two of them, I just are constantly going to be bitter. So it's of course happens to be, constant with them. And then as Blythe walks away, Dixie comments about, enjoy them while you can, because the universe always seems to bring us back together. And then we see the final scene of the episode is young Don is drinking at the bar, and he's talking about separating from his wife, and guess who shows up? Dixie. And so now we know the beginnings of Ryan and Blue. So that was the end of the episode. That was quick. We got through that quick.
I know. I was thinking
Flew through that.
going through it.
What do you guys think of the episode as a whole?
You guys, I hate to say this. This is the boringest episode I think they've ever done. And I was even telling you guys this before we started recording. I was just like, there was just no depth to the episode. Like, usually Begins episodes, you get like all this emotion, all the depth. I'm not saying there was no emotion. Like, yes, there's a lot of emotional things that happen, but I just felt like they were going through some of his life story, and like I wasn't seeing the things. I wasn't feeling some of the things. Like, don't get me wrong, there were like definitely those like moments that I was just like, oh shit, this is so sad. But like, they really didn't tell us anything that we didn't already know, or that they hadn't alluded to. And I was just like, I was watching this and I was like, God, maybe this is just me, but this is so boring. And I hate to be like that, but it was like, I just was like, wow, this is it. I feel like I wanted more. I feel like this is nothing, but you know what? It's whatever.
I agree with a lot of what Katie said. I think the only times in this episode I actually felt emotionally invested were the horses, because I give shit. I give a shit about animals. And any scene where an animal is in danger or hurt will stress me out. And I did cry at the cyclist scene. I was not expecting to shed tears for this episode because it was not happening at any other point. But that actually really stuck hard. As tragic as it was, I would just like to say, we were talking about this before. As tragic as it was, I'm kind of glad they went with that route, partially because of, as tragic as it was, it felt very realistic as well with everything that was happening. So that was a good scene. Everything else, I don't know, man. There's not a thing that can really get me to give a shit about the show. And Katie is right that like all of the Begins episodes have just been so emotionally impactful and have just hit you square in the feels. And you know what? If you love Nashville, if you're really invested in these characters, the way that like we are/were for 911 and Lone Star, I'm sure this probably hit. But when you already don't really care about a show, this was just boring. And also it's Don, and I feel like a lot of people have a lot of opinions on Don.
Yeah.
Including mine, that I don't like him.
Yeah, they could have made this impactful for Don though, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I also
They
hold a little bit of resentment that they refused to do Begins episodes for Lone Star. And I get and people are like, oh, well, we knew why they became firefighters. And I'm like, somewhat, but also like, I don't agree with that logic, because like they could have had it go in a different direction as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
also, we kind of knew why for 911 as well. Like for a couple of people, we knew like hints, like we were dropped little tidbits in their lives before we got Begins. I won't, not necessarily, like looking back, we didn't know tons about it. I think probably the most clear one we had before like the most recent influx of firefighters was probably Eddie, because Eddie joined kind of right out of the blue. But even then we still had Begins episode for him kind of immediately. So, or in later seasons.
That's
But
still probably one of my favorites.
I know.
it is, yeah. His,
Yeah.
Bucks. But honestly, I've grown to appreciate all of those Begins
Oh
episodes
yeah, for sure.
more
Yeah,
and more.
yeah.
It's
Even
surprisingly concerning to how long ago my feelings were.
yeah. Well, even the two Bobby Begins, yeah, all of them. I think they
Yeah.
gave a more. I think what gets me in with Dawn, and so I'll say my final thoughts about the show. I think it was of all the characters, Dawn's like history seems to be the most predictable because we know he already has a history with Blythe and Dixie. So like, yes, they were giving us like a timeline per se about like when their relationship started and stuff, like friendship, relationship, whatever you want to call it, situationship, and so it wasn't like surprising. And I do feel for him, like losing your family and your little sister and being the sole survivor of a house fire is very devastating, and that you carry that with you for the rest of your life. You lose everything that you've ever known. And I don't remember what they specifically said about who he went into, but it sounded like he was a foster kid. So it sounds like he didn't have any family to go to. So
he for sure was, and they
so he was in
did
the
hint
system.
at that.
Yeah. So I feel for him. I do. But outside of that, it feels like a kind of a predictable situation. And it's like the guy on the wrong side of the tracks falls in love with the girl on the other side of the tracks. And, then him and her, we already knew about how Ryan was conceived. They had a relationship when he was like 8. Then he and Dixie reconnected, and, Lou came into the picture, and
it just wasn't really anything new.
No. So it was just like putting pictures and video to what we already knew in a way. So it wasn't
and also, like,
shocking.
I had heard, I don't know where, I don't know if I was reading speculations, I don't know what I heard, but I had heard some much more dramatic, very different story as to what could have happened to Don's family. And I went in I don't know why I had in my head that something in particular had happened. And this was not, in fact, what happened. And honestly, I kind of like what I heard a bit better. Like, it was a little bit more interesting.
I don't know why.
This
I
was
have like a
realistic.
different memory too, and I'm just like,
was it like his brother?
Yes.
Yeah, like his brother killed them. Or something.
I was thinking about that when we were recording because I was like, where in my Delulu brain did I get that his brother was the one that killed the family? And then it's this dude, and I'm like, well, that's not his brother.
I thought the same thing. I was like, what the heck? Like, yeah. No,
like, I kept waiting up until the parole hearing. I was still expecting there to be a twist where he's actually like, well, he was my brother, and everyone's like, you what? And there
also,
was,
I feel like that would have been made a little bit more sense because if that had been the outcome, like it would have made sense of fire being set at night. Because even we were talking about this before recording about like, guy didn't expect anybody to be home, but like this is a family with young kids, like, and it's night.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they be home? Like.
Because that's all that caught my attention.
Lazy with the detail.
Yeah.
Or they're like, nobody will think about this.
And like timeline.
I know they try to go soap opera-y a little bit, like. I do, which maybe this is why these like storylines are like this. But like the whole boy across one side of the track fall in love with a girl on the other side of the track, but his family is killed for money reasons. And I don't know, it's just like, are we in the 1800s with duels and we're gonna march and fire at the count of 10 outside of a saloon? Which I also said when we were talking originally that if you just dropped Don and Dixie into like Wild West, we would have another Bonnie and Clyde on our hands. And well, I mean, why did I leave this whole episode just going, honestly, they just should have stayed together. Here's the thing, is that
like Don doesn't deserve Blythe is the thing.
Don does not deserve Blythe. Like, I'm not saying Blythe is a perfect person, not at all, but like, she doesn't deserve any of that. And like, it's kind of like Don and Dixie fed off of each other's like fire and energy, but it kind of made them into worse people.
Yeah.
But like, Blythe is very calming and she calms Don. But like, that's also a kind of exhausting thing, especially when that fire is coming back and like, I think I was maybe EJ, I might have said this too earlier, maybe right before you hopped on, Katie, that like, gosh, I just lost what I was thinking. Oh, that like if Blythe wasn't fighting a bit, like if she just chose to keep calm place, like be steady in her marriage and be like, oh, I'm not worried about it, Dixie would be able to steal Dawn away. Like, 100%. I also don't think this man's worth trash. So, again, why are two women fighting over this mediocre ass name?
Oh my God. I don't even know what to say anymore. I love
Yeah.
making fun of this show. Like, I hate to be like that.
Yeah.
It's never my intention. Like, the second, before we even got the details on it, like, the second it was announced that it was Nashville, I was like, okay, well, this could be fun or cool or something. And then we got all the details and we were so skeptical. And then, of course it starts airing and we're just like, what the hell is this? And I realized what they were trying to do more and more as we watch this show more. I'm like, oh, they were just really trying to make it like this full on soap opera drama and like go away from the formula, which is not smart on their part, but whatever. It's just Nashville is gonna be how Nashville is, and we'll just have to deal with that. It is kind of fun to talk about, like, not gonna lie.
Oh, it
Like, we're
is.
not necessarily talking about this as fans. Well, we're definitely not talking about this as fans. But like, you know, it's kind of fun to like review it, I guess, in this sense.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
feel like
no,
we're kind of all in that point where like
Mhm.
we're just reviewing this. We're giving you the bullet points of the episodes and like talking about. And yeah, I was talking to somebody not long ago and they're like, "Oh my God, I love Nashville." And I'm like, "Huh? How?" Like it was just this
Yeah.
weird, like I didn't even know what to say because I was like, okay, because you know, like it was somebody I hadn't met before, and I didn't want to like piss in their Cheerios or whatever.
Right, burst
But
your bubble, yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
you like this? And I don't know. Yeah, this is definitely not. I will say that I've noticed that their main cast of characters seems to be a little smaller than 911's and even Lone Stars.
It is.
So it is, I think it's a little more tighter knit. And sometimes when you find shows like that, there tends to be a little bit more focus on one person or the other. Whereas when you have a larger cast, even like 911, when you have not only the main cast, but you have a huge supporting cast that are just as important as your main, you have a lot of storylines that can be mixed and blended and put together.
And part of that also is that, because I agree, but also 911, I think what also was similar when it was like during its first season kind of thing. Like it was smaller definitely than it is now. And also, like, sometimes I'm thinking, not saying necessarily that I'd like it much more, but like, I feel like it may have been a mistake to try and branch out on a show like this, try like change up the formula this severely in a show under 911's franchise. Because 911 is known to be like a certain standard of show, a certain formula. It's not supposed to be the soap opera thing. Like, it has its moments, let's be real.
Right.
But it's not meant to that. So I think if Ryan Murphy or ABC just in general, we know it's Ryan's idea, but like ABC in general had decided to put this show out under its own thing, like Rescue 911 or Rescue Nashville or something like that. Some generic that they, not saying again it would be much better, but it would not be compared like this by anybody necessarily, other than just being like, no different than me comparing 911 and Emergency, or people that compare 911 and Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, that kind.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I think they just made a flaw in that.
Yeah.
Also by canceling Lone Star and having people be bitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also the reason why Nashville is like around is partially because of like 911 fans, although I know a majority of 911 fans and Lone Star fans are not watching it. The reason why they even have a start is because of that show.
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah.
And to touch on something Grace mentioned too, I was thinking about it because I really get what you guys are saying about changing the iteration and the formula for the show. And if any of you watched the NCIS franchise, it came from a series called JAG, which was literally a procedural, but it was about two military lawyers and them trying cases in military court. And then NCIS was a side piece of that. And then that was kind of a backdoor pilot into NCIS. But then NCIS had this really lengthy run. And then they decided to create another series, and they created NCIS Los Angeles, which was different in the case that they focused a lot more on the undercover type of jobs that they needed to do. And there was definitely a huge difference to the series, even though they shared like similar parents in a way. But I think that's why NCIS LA was so successful, because it had just enough of the traditional crime procedural, but it also was different enough that people weren't directly comparing it to NCIS. And
Yeah.
which is funny that I bring that up. And Chris O'Donnell, who plays Don Hart, was in one of the main characters in LA.
I was thinking that. I was like, oh, wait.
I was thinking about, I was like, yeah, it's like, so I feel like they had a really good run with Lone Star and 911. And I think they were trying to change the formula, but I hope they've learned that, well, fortunately they haven't, because Nashville's getting a second season.
Yeah.
I was like, if
at this point, they just got to commit to the bid.
Yeah, now they have to commit to it. I don't know. I'm not, there's a comment in my house now that's like, yeah, I'm not going to put you through that torture. So we obviously watch these episodes. I don't watch them live. I watch them whenever. And, my roommate and I usually watch 911 together, but I'm like, I'm not going to make you sit through this show, because she hates it. Yeah. She's like, I really hate this. She's like, I can't, so I'm like, I don't even make her sit down and watch them with me anymore, because they're just terrible, in her eyes. And I'm not a fan. So I'm really just giving you the facts and saying how I feel about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was even one of those things where we were watching like the several episodes or whatever during break. I was like, guys, this show is really putting me into a bad slump of watching TV. It's really putting me in a bad mood.
Going back to 911 was so good.
Which I'm glad this is just I'm glad we're getting like the bulk out of the episodes that we'll have to watch during this break, so we don't have to do it at the end of 911 to come off such a high and then go to such a low. And I hate saying that because I don't want to be judgmental, but guys, I just don't know about this show. If I was just watching this, if I had been like, oh hey, I like that show 911, I liked Lone Star, and okay, this new show is coming out, I probably would have watched the first episode, and then I would have maybe given it a few episodes, and then I probably would stop watching it because it's just what. But I do like to watch TV shows and kind of share my thoughts. So honestly, it's wrecked.
I mean, that's what we're here for, right? And I love talking about this with you guys, partially because I don't mind giving Nashville some shit. But also I like hearing everyone's thoughts on things, and I like just the discussions we have. And I was just thinking, and we don't need to hark on about this much longer if we don't want, but I was kind of thinking that what I wish they had done, and if they decide to give us a different show in the future, if they decide to give us a fourth 911 show, what I would love to see is the same procedural vibe that we get from 911 and Lone Star, but special operations, a special operations unit, water rescue.
I would really like to see that.
It will spice it up, because I was just thinking what you were talking about with NCIS is they they did more undercover, they switch areas, which has a whole lot. If they did something like that, I think another flaw of theirs was choosing a place that had so many things in common with Texas.
Yeah.
The country vibe, the weather, the not even downing any of that, because those are good emergencies, tornadoes. Theoretically, those happen, and those are, you're fucking shit out of luck if you're caught out of one of those. But stuff like that, it's especially having them right after the other, it's okay, it feels like a repeat, and that's not to denounce Nashville, it just does. So it's go somewhere with a completely different climate, completely different emergencies, and or change to special operations, or to flight emergencies, or to something different, because that will give us something new to talk about, other than just being oh, a barn on fire, where have we seen that before?
Right. Yeah. I guess the one benefit they do have is that they do film in Nashville.
Yeah.
And yes, 911 films in LA, but that's different, because
everything films in LA.
So I feel you can't compare that
Yeah.
because that is
That's
the
true.
standard. So it is like the first like in this franchise that actually films whatever
Outside of LA on
outside.
location.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of shows don't. Like I think the only other
Yeah.
series that do are like the one Chicago and like SVU and Law and Order. They film where they actually take place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good point too. Like,
True. Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm sure there were some opportunities, and they may have shopped around for other cities to do this in and wanting to film there. Because
Oh,
I know
they
they would.
did.
Mhm.
They wanted Hawaii, and everyone
Yeah.
called them out for it, which is I think one of the reasons why they didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because
Yeah.
we've had Baywatch Hawaii, we've
Well,
had a few
also it's
other
just not
instances
like a
of
good look
Hawaii.
now
Yeah.
too, because the locals do not want you there.
Yeah. They had their
Understandably so.
Yeah, they had the Hawaii 5-0 there for like 10, I think it's 10 seasons. I think they're like, yeah, we want our islands back,
Yeah.
which I totally respect.
Yeah, they want, and I
Yeah.
know the another idea that was tossed around there, which a lot of people were like, "Oh, that could be interesting," is Vegas.
It could be.
Having been to Vegas, it's very boring, which is weird to say because there's a lot to do there. I don't know. I only
Yeah.
saw a little bit of it. I've walked part of the strip. I was like, did it? Don't care to see it
It's
again.
like
Like,
nowhere I ever want to
I
go. I always say that.
I think I desperately want like a cold environment.
Yeah,
Like
I
go to
was thinking in my
Wisconsin or
head.
go to Maine or something like
I was
that.
like, can we just go to Canada?
I was like, I was thinking like,
911 Juno.
could we do like Alaska? Like even
Yeah.
I would because then we could get water rescues, we could get freezing rescues, we could get, weather rescues, animal like all these different things. But again, would that be a place that they would let them film in live, like on location? And so
And
I
like, would it also
Probably
be a good
not.
idea?
yeah,
Because Alaska is very wild, and also you don't want to encroach upon indigenous areas as well,
right.
because
I'm a huge
um
proponent
th-
of protecting native land. Yeah.
exactly. But like I was thinking about like I don't really care if they film on location for this, but I was thinking about 901 Alaska because I was like, listen, if we could fit a diverse cast into a 901 Alaska show, because first of all, Alaska, very conservative, sparsely populated,
Mhm.
kind of hand in hand. It's very red. I think having a diverse firehouse in there and also having like the specific challenges of like the types that go to Alaska for work or for escape purposes, and like the specific train. I just think it'd be cool. Everyone, hit me up, okay? We're writing your next show for you.
Right.
Yeah, I love how
Literally,
we're actively just talking about like
Yeah.
we're just
not
doing their job
different
for them.
911 as if
Yeah.
Nashville isn't here. It was funny because I did do this when they were talking about like what 911 that they were gonna do, and I was like, okay, what do we want to see for this? And I remember the video like got actually like a lot of traction. Like I can't remember, but I think it got like probably it doesn't matter, but it got like over like 60,000 views. And
Yeah.
so many people were commenting different ideas, and I was like, okay, I can get behind this. I can get behind this.
Right.
It's just funny.
I
So I
think
actually did that in real time.
Yeah, and I think I really like watching is like I really think the Alaska could have had some really good side by side working with Coast Guard, with there
Mhm.
being a lot of presence up there with the Bering Sea, the fishing,
Yeah.
and a lot of that. So I feel like that's something we don't see a lot is the mixed like we saw it for Bobby's when the lab scene. We saw that with the like different ABC organizations coming in. The alphabetical soup. FBI, whoever coming in. But I just like the military, like working alongside them for things. And maybe that's why I liked NCIS for so long because it was different than just your standard CSI because you're adding like the military element to it too. So I think it'd be
Yeah.
really cool if we could find a way to have an iteration of the series that works closely, or even do something in LA where like there is a mass casualty event or something, and our first responders work with the Coast Guard or lifeguards to rescue people. I don't know, something like we had before, or yeah, just working with different organizations and see how the differences and the similarities
Yeah.
play out.
And there's something else about it. And this is something I think 9-1, I don't know that they'll have a chance to do really because of how they're positioned. Lone Star did not go into it, nor do I think Nashville is going to. I don't think either of them will really have the chance. So, like, if say there was a 911 Alaska show, as long as there are voices, like own voices on the writing team and stuff like that, I would want some of these discussions about Indigenous lands and respecting Indigenous communities and helping the Indigenous communities, partially because of how Indigenous peoples in across the Americas are treated, like the absolute neglect and horrors that they face in this country alone. Absolutely horrible. We're only just fading, like, as far as the Indigenous people of the Arctic are concerned, we're only just fading out a like bad term that used to be the common term for them. Inuit is the correct term. So if we were dealing with like if we had Inuit voices in the writing room, or Indigenous in general, and could have those discussions, because we have those discussions with immigrants, we have those discussions, especially in like Lone Star because they were in Texas. We had some of those valuable discussions. We've had valuable social commentary, which is another thing I do miss from Nashville, because we don't have that commentary except rich versus poor, and even then not really a good conversation going on there. So that's like, I would want some of that, partially because of the still like rampant neglect and abuse of Indigenous peoples by our government, by our people. Like, we need to do better, and what we need to start doing is showing that in shows to make it a topic of conversation, make it a household conversation. So maybe things can finally like have land back conversations, because we can do better eventually. Better sooner rather than later. But it'll probably be later, but we need to start talking about. That's what I want from a show like this.
Yeah. I also feel like, unfortunately, a show that sounds so good they're never going to do.
Yeah.
Right?
They won't.
Like, oh, I'd watch it. Yeah, they'll never do that.
And also, like, I can't blame them, because that is a lot of moving parts to do for a show. Like, they obviously, like, want to keep it on, like, the first responder aspect, and they couldn't do all these things for just more than one episode.
Yeah, that's true.
And I still think it would be interesting.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I know there's a lot, and we don't know what is going to come. I mean, there may be some drastic changes with the second season, positive or negative, and it may change the telemetry of Nashville. Whether us fans like it or not, there's people on the ABC team on social media finding out what fans are saying about the show, and there's not, you can't necessarily do everything fans complain about, but if ABC is concerned about loss of reviews, they may be like, okay, you guys need to focus on this, or so I think we will see what season 2 brings around, but I don't know if I'll pay much attention to it.
Like, I try and remember that, like, comparatively, season 2 of the original is so much better than season 1, even though I've grown to have an appreciation for season 1 after all this time. But back in the day, we all hated season 1.
True. We were all like, skip season 1.
Skip season 1. Now I have an appreciation for it, but that took ages for me to grow. So like, I don't necessarily expect them to knock it out of the park like season 2 for the original did for Nashville. Like, I don't expect that, but maybe they'll start picking it up. We never know. I don't think I'm ever going to be a fan of it. I think we're only ever just going to be reviewing it, but I am, we're stuck with it for the time being. So we'll just see how it goes. And ABC, hit us up if you want some like good ideas.
Right?
If you pay us a lot of money, please.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Nashville, we are going to touch on a couple more episodes in our next episode, so be on the lookout for that. And I think we're going to end it here. Yeah. So thank you all so much for joining us and listening. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and check us out on YouTube. Or visit 911lsroundup.com and follow us on socials at 911lsroundup. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. And of course, come join us on our Discord. The link's down below and on the website.
You guys can follow me, Katie, at For the Love of Tarlos on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads.
You guys can follow me, Grace, at Ronan Raphael 901 on Instagram and Threads.
You can follow me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.